It made our job a lot easier as coaches when you could actually give players a lot better understanding of path-face relationship and then how that affect curvature on the ball and start direction. We had a little chat off camera around, I suppose, short game. So we can't go into the details of what we talked about off camera because of time, but
it's rich.
Talk a little bit around how you're seeing TrackMan be used by coaches and that data, sort of the changes we're starting to see, say, in like short game mechanics and other aspects.
Yeah, I mean, basically, maybe taking a little bit of a history how TrackMan has been used. Originally, when we came out with TrackMan and measured, spin rate and trajectory and so on, the first users was really the club fitters and that was primarily, I would say, drivers, because this is a very important club in your bag. But then as people got to understand the numbers more, both face to path, attack angle, and so on, using also TrackMan for other clubs in the bag. But I would say until recently, very few coaches have actually used TrackMan for the short game, and I mean I think the biggest news in golf, or biggest history in golf in last year in 23, that was the transformation of Victor Hovland with his coach Joe Mayo. How he went from being maybe one of the worst on tour on short game to being arguably one of the best ones on the short game, and he did a dramatic change in how he was hitting his chip shots, and that was all based on, you can say, the TrackMan numbers, and there are things you really need to be look out for. I mean, this is what he basically did was going from a very shallow angle attack to a very double-digit steep angle of attack. The advantage of doing that is your chances of making a good contact, and good contact should also be understood in the way, not only hit it in the center of the face, but make sure you get that friction which is necessary to create that spin. So if you want to have that tight pin and you want to have this low trajectory pitch shot that bounces and then stops, sipping action, physics tells us that the only way you can do that is basically by having what we call spin loft, which is the angle between the direction of the club, basically the attack angle, and the orientation of the club face, basically the dynamic loft, and the angle between those two is basically the spin loft, and that creates this oblique impact, which is a necessity in order to create spin. But the thing is that, especially when you want to have a lot of spin on the ball, the more you need a high spin loft, but you need friction to create the spin. And when you have friction, it actually, the more spin you need to create, the longer time it takes to create it. And if you have low friction, it takes longer time to create it. So you might run into a situation where the ball is actually leaving the club face before it reaches its potential spin rate. And that was exactly what was happening with Victor Hovland. So basically, he had the same spin loft, same club speed, but then by changing his technique, his spin rate went up with 50%.
That's really interesting. We're going to have to do a geeky article on that. So that kind of gets into spin loft, friction, and then torque, which is the force applied over time, is going to go onto that, right? We need to dig into that. That's cool.
It's a little bit deep here, so it's difficult. I have some cool charts, but that will be for another time.
I'm going to ask you for them up there. So let's move back on, I suppose, back up to surface level. And many years ago, I remember seeing some wonderful graphic where you looked at the dispersion of average club golfer from 160 yards, I believe it was, and how short it was. And one of the takeaways was just, if you just took one more club than you thought you were, you're going to be a heck of a lot better golfer. Are there any other things you see in terms of the dispersion of golfers, whether it be at a club level or at a high performance level, that interest you, or just kind of have a little bit of interesting story around performance?
I mean, I think it's hugely important knowing your dispersion pattern, because you should factor that in your course management. And as you say, you might think that you can hit this shot to the pin, but you might only be able to do that in 1 out of 10 attempts, and so you will be better off actually clubbing down a little bit, but it all depends on your dispersion pattern. So of course, the better you are, the tighter it becomes. And again, we have one of the applications when you're using TrackMan is we have a AI coach. She's called Tracy, by the way, and the way she works is that if you let's say you take your 7-iron and you hit a couple of shots and so on, it will basically benchmark how you are swinging the club, how you are attacking the ball, and based on that, you can say your swing DNA, it will tell you, well, this is the trajectory you should be having. This will be the optimal trajectory the way you're swinging the club. But that might not be the trajectory you're actually achieving. So, and we are benchmarking that on a scale from 0 to 100, and basically nobody is going to be 100. And we have one which is called a trajectory, but basically that tells you how efficiently are you using your club speed to create an efficient ball flight. And then we have the other parameters called precision, and that tells you, you might not be very good at converting your club speed into an efficient trajectory, but if you can put the ball in the same spot all the time, you can play very good golf. And so there's these, both these parameters. And what Tracy does is look at these scores and do the full analysis of you, and it then comes with recommendations that say the one thing that can have the biggest impact on your golf game and on these trajectory and the precision would be whether that's your attack angle, whether that's your face to path, whether that's the impact location, but it'll basically rank the ones that you will have the biggest bang for the buck, so to speak. So that's another one of the cool features that you can use for that, and again giving that insight in your coming back to the dispersion, which is basically reflected in this precision. If getting the knowledge to how that is and how that is for each club in your bag, it's hugely important and empowers you again when you're going to hit the golf shots on the golf course, whether that is on a physical real golf course or it's in your simulator. That's really helpful information.
I think that's a nice way to sort of wrap up that section, because at the end of the day, golfers can get very obsessed with swing and impact factors, but the whole point is to actually get the ball to the target. So it's really cool that you've got that technology there. And as you say, it doesn't have to go straight or on a straight path, but if you can get the ball to the target consistently, you can be incredibly good golfer.
And basically, we don't care whether you are drawing it or you're fading it to the pin, whether you're hitting it high, low, or mid. Again, there is you can curve it too much, you can and you can hit it too low or too high, and so on. But it also depends on what's your preference. It also depends on what golf courses you're playing. Typically what we are seeing is that people that play a lot of links courses, they have a lower trajectory preference because it's typically quite windy. The shorter amount of time you can say you have the ball in the air, the less affected you are by the wind. On the other hand, if you're playing park courses and so on, you might have a higher ball flight preference. But giving you an insight into that, and again helping you to make the choices both on which shot you want to do, but understanding how you are performing, your skill level and that, and give you motivation to work on exactly the right things when you're working on your performance.
Nice. So let's finish off with this AI motion analysis.
Yes.
So 2D or 3D?
It is. When we developed this, it was this has been 2.5 years underway. So you're just right now what you're seeing is just tip of the iceberg. Okay. But so when we developed this, we developed first a multi-camera, full 3D markerless tracking system. We benchmarked that on our reference system. We're using a marker-based system, Qualisys, for this, so making sure that we got the accuracy of it. But then we at the same time we also realized that this full 3D with hundreds of parameters you can look at, people will get lost in this. So we made the decision to. I'm not saying we're not going to put a product out with a full 3D at some point, but we took the decision, let's make sure that we are empowering, we can say, all coaches, all golfers, and by using this very accurate skeleton tracking to do automated overlays on the videos you are capturing. So that can be, and that's what AI motion analysis is doing. So whether that's your hand path or your pelvis from setup to through the swing, the torso and so on, And we talked earlier about short game, Victor Hovland and so on. If you see the changes he has been making during 23, basically he used to have his left side being very, very stable when he did his pitch shot, but now he's actually moving his left side. At the top of the backswing, it's 4 to 5 inches towards the target line. But then that's how he sort of gets this very, very steep angle of attack. And then he actually, and this is something, speaking with his coach, he figured out on his own that he was basically, through impact, he's actually, standing up on the left-hand side. And that's why he gets even though he has a very, very steep angle of attack, he reduces the swing radius, so more narrow, and that's why the club comes quickly off the ground. So he's not even taking divots, even though he's 10-degree downs on it. So it's pretty amazing, right? Yeah. And at the same time, he also did his swing plane, so basically how flat or steep you are, and he changed that from being on these chip shots from 73 degrees to over 80 degrees. So almost like vertical. And that's another way, the more vertical your swing plane is, the short amount of time the club is close to the ground. And that also helps not taking, deep divots and digging into the ground, even though you're steep. So it's pretty fascinating. Again, it's very, very nerdy.
We're fine with that. So I think one question just to wrap up on the AI, on the engineering side, how challenging it must be to develop this. So working with Colossus you kind of calibrate to like 0.1 millimeters with multi-camera system.
Yeah.
You then have to take in a signal from a camera, filter the data points, model that, and then somehow spit out the information. That is so challenging, but what were some of the things that were easy, and what was sort of one of those ones where you had to be banging your head against the wall to try and solve as you came up with this system?
Again, our motion analysis is based on a full skeleton tracking, and there is some open source code out there, but they're not trained on golf swing, and you'll see also some other products out there where just have your iPhone and then you can do this. We took the approach of doing this from the ground up, so this is totally made internally, and that's why we are quite bullish about we have much more accurate in tracking the skeleton than the other products out there. So of course that takes time, and it creates skills. I mean, we're talking about neural networks, AI to do these things, but we have a lot of great people in our R&D. We have 225 people in the R&D department, which I'm overseeing, and some super bright people there on this motion analysis. So again, it's been a long time in the works, and there's all kind of challenges. You can say is that. First of all, you have to capture the video. You have to transfer that very snappy, because when you have a swing, you want to see basically immediately you want to see your video, and we have done some really great improvements on that. So now when you're hitting a shot, maybe we can show that later.
Yeah, we're off there. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But when you hit a shot, basically within 2-3 seconds, you will have both the video as well as the motion analysis available. Cool. So that's and getting to that point. It's work, and it is. You have to invent a few things along the way, but again, it's not against the laws of physics, as I say, so that can be done. And I have a lot of great colleagues, so that's why it's.
We'll end on that one, and we'll go try it. But I think it's not against the laws of physics. Is probably my favourite line of the interview. Fredrick, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Cheers.